This is the Balanced Growth Show with Dr. Travis Perry, helping successful business professionals like you achieve balance in their lives.
Welcome to another episode of the Balanced Growth Show. I'm your host, Dr. Travis Perry. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with Brent Beck. Brent is a retired airplane pilot who flew 28,000 hours over 43 years. He and his wife, Tauni, have 5 children and 19 grandchildren. Together, they created the Grandpa Beck's Games, which has gone from a self-funded startup to a global brand of family card games that has sold over 2 million games in 9 languages. Millions have enriched relationships while playing their games with family and friends. I'm excited to welcome Brent to the show. Thanks, Brent, for being here.
Hi, it's great to be with you.
Absolutely. It's good to get to know you in the pre-show. And, my kids and I, we attended a conference earlier this year about family history. And I was actually really surprised to see, this card game, business that was there, and more surprised that my kids knew exactly who you were and that they loved all of these games that you have. We have a half a dozen of them in our own home. So I'm a big fan. It brings us together. We love playing games as a family, and real games, as you mentioned in your mission, is to bring these families together. So it's making a difference. But anyway, kind of the background to this is, as we got started talking, I was like, man, this guy knows a lot about bringing families together. This is my mission. My mission is to help families really make time for each other. And that is the balance that I have seen in so many overworked workaholics. So I'm going to let you tell your story. And I'm excited to dive into this episode and really get into the meat of what you have done and your family have done, the sacrifices you've made to make this business boom and to keep the balance that you've really worked hard for. So I know you start off as a airplane pilot and for your career, but tell us, and you picked up on this, listening to some of my other episodes, that I wanted to be a pilot, and I struggled with this idea that I wouldn't have great balance. So I kind of didn't even get started in the industry. But I know balance was important to you. So I'll let you tell your story. Tell us about your background as a pilot and how you're able to make some sense out of this industry and be able to find some balance.
I grew up right near the SeaTac airport and watched the planes fly overhead, and was looking for some kind of a direction in a career, and figured somebody's got to fly those planes. I took a little demo flight when I was 16, but thought I could never afford to be a pilot because I didn't have anybody paying my way, and I didn't want to go in the military because I didn't want to get shot at or shoot at anybody. But I, worked and kind of made my own way through the training and was able to get started. It took a long time. A lot of jobs I applied for, I didn't get. It was a very long process, but it took me about 10 years from the time I started flying before I had chance to get hired by the airline I worked for 33 years, Alaska Airlines. And I had to get a degree because that was a requirement back then. And it took me 5 years working part-time and going to school full-time and to get that degree. So it was not an easy process, but it was a goal that I was committed to, and I enjoyed it. And in my experience, because I lived near the airport, I was able to be home a lot. I was able to trade trips around and get time off. I was able to enjoy my job, but get home and enjoy being with the family. So it was a very good family life, I think. And we had lots of fun time getting together when I wasn't flying, and we were able to use the flight benefits to go fun places as a family. So I really had a great career doing that. But being not a great financial planner, like some people are, I figured I need a little extra for retirement. So we had an idea to make a card game. I was naive enough at the time to not know how hard the process was. My wife's father had known a guy from a business thing that had made a game, was selling a ton of them. The first game, he was an illustrator or a graphic guy as well. So he was going to design the game and sell it. It was going to be easy. He was just going to make some extra money because he was going to sell with his other game. Unfortunately, that all kind of fell apart, and we now had this game and no way to sell it. So we had another great idea, and then worked hard to get these two branded together as a brand. And then we just were naive enough to go off to Toy Fair in New York in the Javits Center with these 2 games 11 and a half years ago, and stand there in a booth for 5 days trying to meet people. And I'm thinking, what am I doing? I'm an airline pilot. Here I am standing there trying to hawk this game, But so I was initially, the goal was financial. But once you start a business, sometimes you're digging a hole because it's costing you money to be in business. But you either have to keep digging the hole and pushing forward, or just ditch it and take it as a loss. So we kept at it. And over a number of years, we kept improving things and getting better connections. And after a while, it turned to be profitable, and we added more games and got some more help. And now we have game number 10 off the printer and game number 11 almost completed, and sales in Asia and Europe and all over the English-speaking world, and thousands of good reviews and lots of good relationships and a lot of fun times. But now that we have got past the kind of startup stage where it was really difficult, now I can be a little more mission-oriented and really focus on the fact that when people tell me that the playing time together has really improved their relationships and given them great memories together and become foundational memories for the kids, then it really becomes gratifying, but also motivates me to do more, to try and help bring people together and to spread that word.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing your story. I know the uphill battle that you faced, not because I tried, because I looked at that battle and said, I don't want that battle as a pilot. The fact that you spent years trying to land the job, and then, were able to eventually become a captain, and you mentioned to me in the pre-show that you and your son actually became a pilot as well. Did he not?
Yeah. The oldest son followed that path, and he also had challenges getting in the training process and being furloughed from a commuter airline and having to go back working the ramp again. Then he finally get hired, but he did get hired by Alaska Airlines about 8 years ago. And the last couple of years before the pandemic, when we were flying together, we flew together a lot as Captain Brent Beck and First Officer Brent Beck, and had a chance to confuse folks. And before the flights, I would stand for the cabin and I'd say, I'm flying with my favorite co-pilot, and I've known him for a long time. But the first time I met him, he was in a hospital. And he just undergone a traumatic experience of being born. And so we had some fun times together. So it was great.
That's fun. That's fun. Your family business before the family business really started.
That's right.
Before
great.
It took off, right? Pun intended. Yes. Oh, dad jokes all day long. Hey, this is fun. It's fun to see that, family was super important to you. And I think you mentioned to me, even while, trying to get that ever, coveted spot of, seniority within an airline, you're taking trades on flight routes. You were trying to work so that you could be there for your kids. You could be there for your community and church service. Why was it important for you to, as you're trying to, be, even just have this career as an airplane pilot, why was it important for you to have as good a balance as possible?
I've always been very family oriented. The first priority has always been, faith and service, but family. I'm very much a kind of mission driven person. I did serve a missionary time before that, before I started off my career. And so if I had thought that being a pilot was going to be something that would degrade my family life, then I wouldn't have done it. But and it could have been a bit more difficult. I've had to commute someplace, but living in my hometown and having my priorities to be home as much as possible, there's a lot of choices, and I would be willing to fly an all-night turn back and forth to Anchorage or Fairbanks and be home in the evenings than to bid it maybe the night trip to where I'd have a nice layover somewhere and be able to relax and go to the beach or whatever. I kind of had the priority more for time off and time with the family than where I laid over or what my schedule was. It wasn't fun working all night all the time and losing sleep, but it was a means to an end.
Yeah, and then as you mentioned in your own story here, that you really wanted some other financial benefits from the games. Like that started off as the real motivation. The airlines were struggling, right? Pensions were slipping away, and you're wanting to try to fill that gap. So as you're starting this entrepreneur venture, how have you been able to really grow and scale? Because it's one thing to be like, hey, we got lucky and we were at these booths and people started buying our games, but luck only gets you so far, right? It doesn't finish the game, so to speak. It gets you started, or it might get you a great break. But there's obviously some patterns here that I'm seeing. There's others that are listening going, yeah, I want to learn from this guy who had a successful career and made a jump. So as this entrepreneur venture began, how have you been able to really grow and scale this business while, simultaneously keeping that balance at the forefront?
Yeah, if I had known how hard it is to self-publish and self-distribute and get things out widely in the world, I might have not taken the leap. After the very first show, a larger game company called me the next week and says, we'll buy Cover Your Assets from you, and it'll be a great game. You can be done. We'll just pay you a commission on this game. So we could have just said, okay, we went to a show, we found a person that can do it, who already has a system. They'll pay us something, and we can go back to doing what we're doing. But we knew that the potential would be much easier in the beginning, but the long-term potential would be much lower if we turned it over to somebody else and got a small percentage of the total business. But he told me, when I told him that I wasn't going to sell it to us, well, don't lose track of that game. That game is special and unique. And so we knew we had something, but it's really hard. There's thousands and thousands of new games made every year. It's really difficult to get into wide distribution. It's really difficult to get into stores. It's difficult to develop the word of mouth ground game that brings people looking for you. When we first started on Amazon, we were just trying to keep up with enough sales to cover our costs. And so it was not anything easy. And people call me all the time, and they want to start a game business, and they want to make a living at it. And I try and help them a little bit, but I don't. I know it's not easy. And if someone tries to jump in and make a living at it right away, it's going to be a rare occurrence where it actually works out. And so I don't claim any special privilege or knowledge that helped me to be able to succeed. We're in a difficult market, but it did take a lot of persistence, and I had to take a lot of time where I might have been on vacation and go to these different conventions and shows, and in my layovers, when I would normally be able to take a walk around town or something, I was on the phone, on the computer, calling stores, trying to get them to take a demo, trying to have them follow up with an order. A lot of work and put in to try and make the ball roll a little bit because it takes momentum to get it going.
Yeah, no, this is really good advice. I had friends who wanted to start, businesses, and one of the first things I asked them is, "Hey, what does your wife think about this, or what does your spouse? How will your family deal with, with what you're trying to accomplish here?" And invariably, the ones who say, gee, they're not as supportive, or they wouldn't like it, then don't do it. Like, is it really worth the effort putting into a business to provide for your family, versus, I'm going to do this in spite of them and without their support? Because I know personally and academically, it just doesn't work that way. How supportive was your family in starting this, game business, in kind of saying, hey, I'm going to help dad, or look at what my husband is doing. Let's talk that. Let's go into the supportive aspects of your family members.
Well, that is a great topic. Over the years, we were playing and trying to figure out games before we actually tried to market something. We had a history of playing games together, and a lot of fun that way. And our kids were very good at being innovative with things, and they loved playing. And as we talked about possibly developing something, they were all supportive. We didn't really actually start going to shows and stuff until our kids were all out of high school, so we didn't take time away from their home time. But I was greatly blessed in that my wife totally believed in in the mission of the thing and the possibility. And she actually is responsible for much of the creative content, both mechanics as far as improvement of the gameplay, as well as she consults heavily with our artistic staff to really help develop the character of the games. And she totally believed that it could work. She believed in me that I could become a pilot, but she also believed that we together could do this business together. And she has a lot of help from the content as well. So it really could not have worked without her. And we would go to these shows together. So it kind of gave us some, like we were in New York, that first show was during the time of her 50th birthday. And so we were out on the show instead of being home celebrating her birthday. But she remembers that that was what happened the week of her birthday in 2012. And then our kids are very supportive. Our oldest daughter is married and has 5 kids, but she runs our social media. My youngest son's wife is our office manager, and she does that while she has 3 little kids at home. And my youngest son, he works a job, but he's very, very strategically minded, and so he helps us work on game mechanics and some other details. And our middle son has created 3 of the games, and he really helped us kind of get the games kind of more cohesively branded and brought up a lot of things together. And he's the one that helped create and nurture the Crumble Cookie Collection, because he has a real strong sales background. So they're all really involved. And now that the company is profitable, we made them all shareholders so they get some return, even if they don't have time to work for the company. But those who do work for us get paid to work, and those who don't work for the company full-time or part-time, they get a little extra help. Because the goal in that part is to be able to help the kids to have more time at home with their families, so that maybe to keep them to a single income family, not have to have the wives get a second job to be able to keep up with the increasing costs. Hopefully the business can kind of help them to have a little more family time together, not have to work quite so much.
Yeah, I love this. You basically, the family has rallied around you and supported so much that it is a family business, right? A lot of
Definitely.
this is run, as you've mentioned, by family members, which when I found out, I was even more intrigued, because growing up in a family business, I was the 3rd generation. I was supposed to take over the business, and it's messy, it's difficult, and statistics show that getting it to the 2nd generation is one thing, but 3rd generation almost never happens. It's really low, like teens percentage wise, as far as it'll get there. So interesting how you've got things set up and that people want to help. And yeah, it's natural that they are part of the process because of your time spent playing these games. Let's talk about that just for a second. What has been some of the biggest, reasons that, making these games is a mission for you when it comes to time? Why do you think that these games can help other families spend time together?
The very first year we were in business, we only had the original golf game and covered assets. And a woman called me up who had a KOA campground. She had a little store in the campground. She really wanted to get some games for her store. And her story was that her 17-year-old son, prior to her discovering these games, would just be in his room all the time playing on the computer. Once she brought home this game from a convention we were at, every night when she got home from work, he'd say, "Let's play this game." And it totally changed their relationship. They went from having really no time together to every evening playing this game together. And she was so motivated from this experience that she wanted to sell it to other people. And at one of the very first shows, we were there for store owners, and this mom and dad were there who had a store, and they had a couple young teen kids with them who just did not want to be drugged around this toy convention. And they just had a bad attitude about being there. But at that point, we had a little table in the back of the booth, and my wife said, "Well, sit down and play this game for a little bit." And in just a couple minutes, we could see all that negative energy go away. And the kids and the parents who had been kind of hating being together were now together and having fun and laughing and having a good time. So those kinds of experiences, and that's just two of thousands of experiences where I've either seen or heard about that kind of thing. It made me realize that there's real benefit in people interacting and laughing and playing and losing and winning and learning to lose and win well. I mean, I think there's a lot of benefit in that.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, the mission at the Make Time Institute is to help families basically make the time to be together, because I know that if they spend time together, things will naturally work themselves out. And this is a great story of that. But the other part of this is about learning to lose well. Now, I grew up, our family game growing up was chess. My grandfather taught my dad how to play chess, but my grandfather would never let my dad win. And I think this is an interesting thing, talking, I don't want to get political, but, support trophies, or just, being the participation trophies in games now. Anyway, I get it. You don't want to be too competitive at some levels, but at other levels, as your kids are learning and growing, teaching them to be able to lose and still hold their head high and still be able to say, good game. That was something we were taught. When you played chess with grandpa, if he beat you, which he did, you would still shake his hand and say, good game. But what was interesting, Brent, I've never told the story on the podcast, but my father was so frustrated with his dad because he couldn't beat him in this blasted game. He went out and read every book he possibly could, went to the library, checked out all these books. I think he was like 13 or 14. And then he started going to these late night chess tournaments and these chess clubs for adults, not for kids, not at the high school. So his mom would drive him down to these often smoke-filled rooms at that time, and he'd sit there playing chess with, people that are 30, 40 years older than him until he was good enough to beat his dad. And it was interesting because my grandpa, telling that story to me one day, he said he was kind of proud of it. He was like, I helped my son learn something. It wasn't just, I was going to just, be easy on him. And so now in my household, my kids, if they beat me in chess, I pay him $20. And so I've got my 7-year-old who loves to play this game, and she loves chess, and she's getting better because she's playing with her brothers and she's learning. And one day she actually beat me. I wasn't paying attention because I was doing something else at the same time. I was multitasking, which I say not to do, right? I was multitasking, and I didn't let her beat me, but I lost to her and I had to pay her $20. And it's interesting that you talk about this concept of what you can learn through games. Love your insight on that about how to lose well.
There's a lot of lessons to learn because in life, we're not going to win every time. I certainly learned a lot from my mistakes and my failures and things over the years. And so if kids are always rewarded as if they're winning when they may not have won, and if there's no grades, maybe they're getting away from grades and stuff in school because they want everybody to not feel bad or whatever, I think it isn't really helping people to excel. And our games are a little more on the kind of social level than chess. It's a little not quite as, in chess, the smartest player is always going to win. Our games have more of an element of luck to them. And there's the shuffling of the cards. There's the randomness of that. And so it is not quite as skill-based as chess is. So there's more chance to win sometimes by luck, which kind of eases the impact a little bit. If you're playing, we used to play like Sorry or Parcheesi, where you get almost to the end and you get sent back to the beginning. That was a little demoralizing. So our games kind of roll, round up and down with multiple rounds and ups and downs, to where it's a little more social. I'm more about the interaction that comes from the game than the actual achieving the game per se, like some larger Euro games might be about building this creative world or whatever that takes hours, and once you've done it, you've kind of done it. Our games are more of a tool towards fun interactive time together where you can kind of, okay, I lost this round, I'm going to win the next round. And, it kind of goes back and forth, and most of them play in rounds. So I find it to be a fun social thing. I don't win every time because there's luck involved, and other people have skillful times too, but I enjoy the interaction, and I enjoy seeing people have fun together as well.
Grandpa Beck does not win at his own game every time. This is going to be the title of the podcast episode. I think that you're exactly right. Like, there's a lot of things we can learn from playing games together, whether it's competitive chess or some fun social games. Like, our family loves these fun social games. There's a lot of them out there, different variations, but yeah, I love that element of there's a little bit of luck. You may not win. The funny part is I play these games with my kids and they beat the pants off me. So I know that they've been playing more than I have. There is a more of an element that you probably are going to give away here of strategy and whatnot, because it takes a while to get to know how to play these games well. And so I think they enjoy that. They enjoy anytime they can beat dad at something. Like, they relish in it. It's fun. But you're right. The interaction that comes from these games, we do a family night every Monday night that, we play a lot of games and we do stuff together. It's not always card games. It's outside. It might be hide and seek, like just things that we can interact with and play. And so when our family gets together, games are usually always a part of it. So I love this. I love your mission. I love what you're trying to do to help families heal, have better relationships, work together, learn from these lessons that are taught while they're spending this time together. What, back to, looking at this as a business and you as the entrepreneur, obviously you may not have thought of this at all. You kind of thought like there's one game, which was Cover Your Assets, right? That was the original game.
Actually, we introduced Cover Your Assets and a game called Golf at the same time.
Oh,
Golf
okay.
is now gnoming around. So when we came, we had these two games that were branded both with the same Grandpa Beck's game theme. So we had a brand from the beginning, which people noticed from the start. Oh, you've got a brand. Because we had two games that were made similarly. That aspect has been improved upon over the last few years to where it's more consistently branded. And there's been a lot of evolution of that because we didn't have it all quite figured out, but we did make it a definitive effort to make it a brand of card games initially instead of just a game.
Yeah. So when you came up with that idea, it didn't sound like you necessarily thought, hey, we're going to have 10, 11 games now out there. This was just, hey, we're going to have a game or two. But now that you're here, now that you really have been able to get, a level of success, and you have this brand and you're building it out, what has been the biggest issues that you've seen as an entrepreneur or for other entrepreneurs that as you've seen them trying to grow their brands and their businesses? And what advice would you give back to entrepreneurs that while they're growing these businesses to keep their balance like you've been able to?
Yeah, the startup phase was difficult, finding the right talent for the artistic part of it, finding the right production, finding storage facilities, finding distribution opportunities. All that was challenging. But we had a dream and we felt it could succeed. And so I had a pension as a backup. I knew I would have something go on if I didn't succeed. But I was putting, for a lot of time, instead of investing in my 401k or stock market or whatever, I was putting all my spare money, and more than spare, but I was making myself feel poor because I was putting all this money into this business, which could have not worked out very well. But I'm a person who kind of sometimes am willing to try stuff, I guess. And I had a neighbor, a good friend who was an accountant, and says, "This is never going to catch on. You're wasting your money," And and so it was kind of, he says, you're cavalier in your approach to this, but I feel, we'll try, and we're going to keep trying, and it was sometimes stressful over those years when we were losing money and spending money and not really making much money and having a hard time getting connections. So I wouldn't say it was fun all along the way. And a lot of extra hours. I was always working full time and doing this full time. Another thing, I've always been really busy, but in the end, it's a better story now than it was 8 years ago before we were turned the corner. So it's but with success, other success comes, when you have thousands of good reviews, and then And you have some international things going on. Other people hear about it. Now we have more and more people coming to us wanting to distribute it for us, or wanting to take it to their country or their language, or to help us in a different way. So success begats success, but getting the ball rolling is not easy.
Yeah, my takeaways from this is have a dream. Don't let other people tell you, even if they're an accountant. Sorry, accountants out there, we love you. But don't let other people, regardless of who they are, deter you from that dream. I think all entrepreneurs face this at some point or another. They have an idea, they have a dream, they want to do something. And the ones that show up and are successful are the ones that persisted, the ones that kept going. It's the ones that listened to their own negative voices or others around them that failed and dropped out. And not that failing is the end, because I failed forward a lot of times. It sounds like you were losing money before you were making much money. And people could see that. Like if you're an accountant year after year, you're failing. This is draining you. But if you have that vision to keep moving forward, and that's inspiring for me. I needed to hear that today. And I hope there's others out there who needed to hear your story and learn from your passion and your willingness to share. Thank you for doing this today. If listeners want to go and they want to check out your games, in fact, if you're a financial advisor, I know we have a lot of advisors and financial professionals listening on this podcast. I recommend Cover Your Assets. It is a fun financial game. It is a fun play on, my kids we grew up having them play Pit. And while this is not exactly, a spin on it or whatnot, I think this is a fun way to play around with money in that way of knowing what are your assets, how can you use this, and it might be a good financial tool. So anyway, advisors out there, a little plug for that game. Our kids love that game. But where can they go, Brent? How do they find you? Where can they learn more about you?
We have a website, grandpabecksgames.com. It's all on there, plus Amazon and Walmart.com. And if you Google Grandpa Beck's Games or any of the game titles, there'll be lots of different things that people have said, and different reviewers and things have posted about us. So we're pretty out there. If you happen to have any one game, my phone number and any email address is in the bottom of every box, in the back of every rule book. So my number is widely distributed on a couple million games now, and sometimes even in foreign countries. So I'm not very private about my number. It's out there everywhere.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for opening up and sharing your story with us today. I know your time is valuable, and we appreciate you being here on the show. So thanks for being such a great guest.
Hey, it's been fun. I really appreciate your work and trying to get families to make time, because it certainly is a lot of people are distracted either by two incomes or by extra goals or extra hobbies. And a lot of people aren't taking time for the family, and there's nothing more important. One thing we always say is life is really all about relationships. And so if you think about it, everything that's really important in life is tied into a relationship, whether it's with God or with family or with other people you work with. And if you can strengthen people through relationships, then you're doing some good in the world.
Love it. Thank you. I really appreciate that thought. And, hope as we're listening to a little bit different type of guest today, someone who has a product, they're selling games. Really, at the end of the day, it is selling relationships, facilitating time, and making that time to be together. So a great example, a great human, and fun episode to record today with you, Grandpa Beck. And it was fun to meet you there in person and good to see you again here today. Anyone who loved this episode, like, share, subscribe, do all those things to help spread the message of what we're doing here at the Make Time Institute for the Balanced Growth Show. Signing off today, and we'll see you at the next episode. Remember, live life on purpose.